Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to be showing you how I have prepped my permaculture garden over the winter with some free, easy to find resources to mulch and amend my garden beds. So the first ingredients that I got were some free leaves. A lot of people rake up their leaves in the fall and leave them in bags on the side of the road, which I pick up in huge quantities because I love leaves. They're a great mulch, they decay pretty quickly, and they're fantastic for the soil, so I think more people need to really appreciate leaves and what they can do for the health of your soil and for your plants. So I'm taking all these leaf bags home to cover my entire garden with, and this is what it looked like in the fall. Not really much to look at, some sage and cabbage and stuff, and that's the pond right there that I set up with just some brown tarp. And there's a drainage spout that goes into a ditch that runs through the center of my garden where you can almost see some kind of mandala shape in the pathways with some keyhole beds around it. So this is basically what it looks like right now. So the first thing I'm adding on top of my garden beds is some compost. This is mostly kitchen scraps and mostly unfinished, but I'm putting it on the beds anyway because it's going to decay more and more over the winter and kind of cold compost in place to add a lot more organic matter to the soil. Now this is a bit unusual, but I asked the groomers to give me some extra dog fur, thinking they would give me brushings to spin into yarn, but they gave me a bunch of short, tiny little clippings, which I didn't want. So I decided to just use it as compost, because I've heard that hair and fur are not only really compostable, but they're also very high in nitrogen. So I decided to just experiment with putting dog fur all over my garden and see if that helps bring up the nitrogen content and any nutrient content into my garden. And then the last thing I added was all the leaves I picked up. Leaves are the most important part. If anything, you could probably mulch the entire garden with just huge piles of leaves and have plenty of nutritious soil to plant in by spring. And I'm throwing that all over my garden, all over the beds and the pathways, just not as much in the pathways as in the beds. Because the more mulch the pathways are going to be, I think it's more likely that the water will kind of seep through more and hold more water that my plants will be able to access when it's dry. So as you can see, I covered everything with leaves to leave over winter. So this is what it looked like during the winter. This was actually early February. We got tons of snow. All you can see out there is my peach tree and some aspen stands that I've let just grow by themselves. A couple purple orax stalks in my little dwarf nectarine tree. So it's completely covered. And this is what it looks like in March right now when it's all melted. So you're starting to see some things come up. I'm starting to see my Egyptian walking onions come up, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, I'll never have to buy scallions again because these are so easy to grow. And over here is my garlic patch. I have tons of garlic. I didn't harvest them all from last year, but here's some kohlrabi and some dandelions that I want to grow and that I appreciate being in my garden. So they're like one of my crops because they're so nutritious. Here's some larkspur flower sprouts, a little bit of spinach, and honestly I don't think the dog's fur's doing much, so I'll probably just put them in the compost pile. And this is my favorite tree right now, my little Siberian pea shrub. It's about a few years old now, and it's growing pretty well, so it fixes a lot of nitrogen. Now my peach tree I didn't really plant right or prune very well, so I'm trying to fix the problems I've created for it. It's really top heavy on the east side, so I got a lot of peaches last year, but it was really leaning the tree over to the east side. So I've had to tether it back. So this year, I'm going to actually be responsible with my tree and prune it. So as you can see, I already went ahead and pruned it. I didn't have my tripod on this day, so I just kind of did it and then filmed the aftermath. So most of the fruiting wood on the east side has been chopped off, so it will hopefully be more balanced. And I've got some more Egyptian walking onions around my peach tree, kind of a little guild thing going on. And I've got lots of extra bulbs that I can transplant to different places, like this garlic patch. So I'm just burying them under here like everlasting gobstoppers. And they will pop up and make bulbs on the top and then fall wherever. So I'll always have onions and garlic. And this one has a really good root system. It was apparently on top of some straw under everything, so it didn't quite get in the soil with those roots. So I'm moving it over to my garlic and onion patch, or my allium keyhole bed, and just planting it in between some garlic in here. I don't mind burying it a lot because I know those stalks are going to come out really easily, and it's a really hardy, good perennial plant to have. I recommend it to everybody to have Egyptian walking onions. They're so good. So here's my strawberry patch that's next to the entrance of the garden on the north side, next to my drainage water spout that goes into the ditch that goes through the garden, where everything grows really well around there. So I'm growing some Bloomsdale spinach. I'm just gonna sow some of that. I do have a tendency to oversow, but I don't mind because whatever I have to thin out, I'll be able to eat as nutritious microgreens. So now I'm adding some sugar snap peas, and I kind of plan the day I'm doing it by the fly, but I figure the peas are going to have a shorter root system than the spinach, so they won't be competing for nutrients in the same levels of soil. They're going to be searching for nutrients at different levels because the root systems are different heights or lengths. So I'm covering that up with a little bit of soil. Not too much, and then covering that over with a lot of leaves to keep the moisture in so I don't have to water it as much. So now I'm just doing this with the rest of the beds. I have 3 kind of rectangular garden beds near the entrance, so I'm just planting whatever I like to plant that's a nice cold crop for March. So I'm planting lots of sugar snap peas and royal purple snow peas because I love those. And I'm also planting some collards. I'm kind of just experimenting with a lot of different things and seeing which will come up. So I like to do a lot of experimentation and just kind of fly by the seat of my pants. Here are some lettuces. They have only a few seeds in each packet, so I'm just putting them all in this area. And I'm seeing a few earthworms here and there, which is a good sign, right under the mulch. So I'm just kind of surface planting those with the small seeds. I'm not pushing them under that deep, but with the big sugar snap peas. So yeah, I reuse a lot of my pill bottles to put seeds in, including this dill that I harvested last fall. And it's so good. Dill is starting to really grow on me as an herb. No pun intended, but I love it. So I'm adding some of that, then also adding more snap peas closer to the fence. I only plant sugar snap peas or any kind of growing peas where there's something for them to climb on nearby. So I always plant peas next to these grapevines on the fence. And there's my kitty Kirky again, snacking on some grass, but I need him to stay off the bed so he doesn't compact them. So another one of my pill bottles has a bug in it. I've seen these bugs, they survive all winter in these pill bottles with my pea seeds. I don't know how that happens. But anyway, just planting more of those next to the grapevine on the fence and getting this all set up for March as soon as possible so I get a good yield. And I love cilantro so much. I would have a whole garden covered in cilantro, so I'm growing a lot of that. And a lot of people would probably not recommend planting the way I'm doing it, a lot of different things in the same small area and oversowing it. But I'm just gonna see how it works for me and see which ones do well and which ones don't as a kind of constant learning process and experimentation. So now to water it down, I'm using some extra rainwater from these buckets. I put them strategically under the house so that all the extra rain runoff goes into these buckets, and in the spring I can just water my whole garden with extra rainwater when it's not raining, so I'm not using any irrigated water right now. So I'm just watering these in really well, giving them the best start possible, especially the peas. They'll need tons of water. I could have soaked the seeds beforehand, but I haven't always had success when I pre-soak them because then they tend to dry out and die. So I'm just like planting them dry and watering them in really well. And then covering them with a lot of mulch. Just cover everything up really well, like tucking them in for bed with a nice blanket. So that'll keep in the moisture pretty well and give them a good chance to start. So around the peach tree, I decided the soil around the peach tree is such compacted clay that I thought there's no way I can sow seeds in just the dirt as it is. So I poured a bunch of my soil conditioner package that I had laying around over winter. I just poured that all around the peach tree. And then I started planting what I wanted to plant. Mostly annuals so far. I've decided to plant a lot of cilantro and also bachelor buttons. And herbs around the peach tree will really help to attract good predator bugs and deter pests. So that's another good reason to plant herbs around your fruit trees as like a permaculture guild. So I'm also planting a bunch of flowers like bachelor buttons or cornflowers are some of my favorite flowers. They're so pretty and they'll attract a lot of beneficial pollinators to help even more pollinate not only the peach tree but a lot of other plants around my garden. So I'm planting those kind of shallow but also pushing them in a bit with my fingers after the fact and then kind of covering them lightly with the soil because I will be covering them with a lot of mulch. Just making sure each one is tucked in at a reasonable soil depth. So I'm watering this in really well with some murky, stinky pond water over the winter, and I feel like the smellier it is, the more nutritious it is, to give my seedlings a really good start with a lot of nitrogen-rich pond scum water. And it's blocking up my spout because I keep getting debris in the watering can. So at some point I always have to take it off and start carefully watering it with just the open spout itself. But actually this time I decided to just keep it on and be really patient, and then I'm covering it over with a huge amount of leaves. I mean, not too many leaves, but I'm covering them over with some good leaves. And in the next video I'll show you how that turned out. So I'll be showing you how I'm gardening as the weeks go on, especially during this quarantine, and showing how my garden progresses, what succeeds, what mistakes I may have made, and what I did really well. So please like this video and subscribe and share with your friends, and see you in the next video. Bye!